The following program was paid for by the friends and partners of WLMB-TV 40 Toledo.
And holding him and singing to him as he went from my arms to the arms of Jesus was the best day of my life. I would do those 4.5 months again and again to be his mother. So that was the answer to my question, where is your God now? Because my Jesus was there so close, like you and I, as if I could just touch him.
Losing a baby is heartbreaking. And although today's guest has experienced great loss, she's here to share her story of God's comfort and healing and to encourage women and families by letting them know that help is available. You don't need to go through heartache alone. Welcome, Kelly Gerken, founder and director of Sufficient Grace Ministries. Kelly, it is an honor to have you here.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
Well, like I said, you're here to tell your story and to share with us about Sufficient Grace Ministries. Would you just go ahead and get right into it?
Yes, so my husband and I have 5 children. We have 2 children who are living, Timothy, who's 23, and James, who will be 16 soon. And we have 3 children in heaven, Faith and Grace and Thomas. We started Sufficient Grace Ministries in 2004. Our purpose is to comfort others with the comfort we've been given from God through our losses. We provide support for families going through the loss of a pregnancy or infant loss, so miscarriage, stillbirth, infant death, or if they receive a life-limiting diagnosis in pregnancy. So we offer them resources and support.
All right, so we're going to hear more about those resources and support in a little bit. But first, I would love for you to share your story with our viewers because it's definitely one that will encourage them and just shows the passion, why you have this passion for the ministry.
Sure. So in 1996, we were expecting for the second time. We had a 2.5-year-old son, young married couple, about 21 years old. We were full of excitement, full of nervousness, full of belly. We were expecting twins. We found out about midway, I think it was about 22 weeks along, that our twins had a condition called twin-to-twin transfusion syndrome. We also learned that day that we were having identical twin girls. So the moment held both joy and a little bit of sorrow that they had this condition. We were in the hospital for a while trying to do some different procedures to alleviate that condition. And each day I would watch on the screen as our daughters, which we had named Faith and Grace, would play on the ultrasound machine in my belly. I could see their pictures. And I waited for those days, for those moments each day. They were precious to me, and I knew them. I knew them because they were my own. We were hopeful. We were prayerful. I think my attitude, they gave us statistics that maybe 20%, there was a 20% chance that one of our babies might have some issues or not make it, or even both of them. And I just said, well, we're praying women in our family. We're strong women. We're praying people. Our babies are going to be just fine. And that was sort of my attitude about those statistics. At 26.5 weeks, however, we heard the words that changed our lives forever. We weren't feeling a lot of movement, and we went to the hospital, and the nurse brought out the ultrasound machine when she couldn't find the heartbeat, and she said, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry there's no heartbeat. And in that moment, you're no longer a 21-year-old invincible person. You know that it can happen to you. There's not going to be identical pink dresses and pink everything, pink bows and tea parties. My husband won't get to walk them down the aisle. It's all gone in an instant, all the dreams that you had for your babies. I heard the words labor and funeral, which didn't belong in the same place. And I had no idea at that time that a woman would have to endure a labor and not hear her baby cry. That wasn't something that I had ever thought about. When they were born, so silently, we held them one in each arm and we sang Amazing Grace. My husband was beside me and my mom at the foot of the bed, and we just had a few minutes with them before they were gone. The grief from that was life-changing. It was hard to leave the house. It was just very difficult. Our next pregnancy was in 1998, and we're no longer invincible, of course, in that pregnancy. So we're hopeful, we're prayerful, but we're afraid a little bit, holding our breath till that midway ultrasound to tell us everything's going to be okay. Instead, our son was diagnosed with a life-limiting condition called Potter's syndrome.
And so what is Potter's syndrome?
Potter's syndrome is the absence of kidneys. So without kidneys, there's low amniotic fluid, and without amniotic fluid, the lungs can't develop. The doctors use the term incompatible with life when they're giving you that diagnosis. We had a week to decide if we would continue the pregnancy or induce labor early, ending the pregnancy. And no one knew. No one knew what to tell us. There were no resources. There were, now we have the internet, we have blogs, we can hear people's stories, we can see their pictures, we can see their experience. We didn't have any of that. We had to navigate through this kind of on our own. What do people do? What's right? What's right in God's eyes? What's right for us? We had stood by that tiny grave once. What would it be like in our tiny town to carry this baby for 4.5 more months knowing that he was not going to live? What would that be like? So the decision didn't come as easy as you would think. As a Christian, obviously, our faith should play into our decisions, and we were praying, but it was very difficult. The doctors told us some scary things could happen carrying a baby without amniotic fluid, and it was very hard to come to that conclusion at first. Mm-hmm. Once we chose to continue the pregnancy, there was no going back, and I didn't regret that choice at all. I'm so grateful that we had that time. One of the questions that day, I just want to mention as part of our story, it was the first time I really felt forsaken by God.
You felt like, where is he?
Where is your God now? It was like this question, where's your God now, over and over. And I didn't have the answer right away. I just knew that he promises he will never leave us nor forsake us, and that my Jesus is still the same. And so I had to keep holding on to that, even not feeling it, and searching the scriptures and really.
So what are some scriptures then that you were clinging on to at that time?
One of the questions I had, and I think we ask this a lot as Christians, we tend to feel like there's a judging of our performance. Why did this have to happen to me once? Why did it have to happen to me again? Did I not have enough faith? If I just learn this lesson, if I can just understand this, will my child be spared? And those are hard questions. Obviously, if someone else were sitting here, I would tell them, of course, that's not how God works. But you ask yourselves those hard questions. So I wanted to learn about faith. And what I learned about faith during that time, I studied in Hebrews, the Hall of Fame of Faith in Hebrews 11. I learned how flawed all of God's people were, how it didn't depend on them knowing the beginning from the end, how sometimes they doubted, they messed up, they made bad choices, and God still used them anyway, that it wasn't about their performance. And that faith isn't something we have to never feel doubt or fear. We just trust God anyway in it. So we named our son Thomas from the scripture in John 20, where Thomas is the one who after Jesus is raised from the dead, he needs to see to believe. He needs to see those holes in his hand to believe that's really Jesus. And Jesus says to him, Thomas, you believe because you see, but blessed are those who believe without seeing. And for us, that was that journey. Those 4.5 months was learning to believe God when you don't see, when you don't get the answers this side of heaven that you're crying out for, and trusting him anyway.
So at this point then, you've lost the twin girls and then Thomas with Potter syndrome. Mm-hmm. So then, after that, then, to have another, because I know then you ended up having your son, but then how did that affect you going into future pregnancies?
If you don't mind, I'd just like to share a bit about Thomas's birth before I answer that, if that's okay. When Thomas was born, all those 4.5 months, you're wondering, how am I going to do this? And I had this great friend that would say, I can see God's grace on you, and when you get to the end of this, his grace will be sufficient for you. You don't get the grace you need tomorrow, today. You only get enough for today. Her name was Dinah. She was a great mentor. And I was hoping she was right. And remember that question, that where's your God now question? That was always there, always kind of lingering, that question. But when Thomas was born, we had a peace that surpasses all human understanding. And I understood what she meant because the grace was there and it was enough. And holding him and singing to him as he went from my arms to the arms of Jesus was the best day of my life. I would do those 4.5 months again and again to be his mother. So that was the answer to my question, where is your God now? Because my Jesus was there so close, like you and I, as if I could just touch him, and I'll never forget that answer. So I didn't want to skip over that part.
Absolutely, no. I'm glad you went back to it.
Further pregnancies definitely are scary after a loss, and you're holding your breath the whole time. It was very hard for my husband and I to, men and women grieve so differently. So that was a lot of stress on our marriage to endure. I think some statistics say maybe 70% of marriages end in divorce after one loss, and we had lost 3 babies. So to lose all 3 babies was quite a strain on our marriage. So there was a lot of stress between us and a lot of fear. But I made a conscious effort in our pregnancy after Faith and Grace and Thomas to choose joy and embrace the time we were given for him. We weren't sure if our marriage would survive that pregnancy. We had to go to counseling and really work through some of that grief. It's very hard for a man to not be able to protect his family, to not be able to fix this broken. And for him, he just wanted to shut down. Here we are in this situation again, and he can't protect us. And what if this baby dies? He didn't die, although we did have some complications early in the pregnancy. He had about a 50% chance of survival. He had a subchorion hematoma, which causes bleeding in pregnancy. But he survived, and he's our 16-year-old ornery son. Sometimes I like to say God put all the ornery from all the babies into this one last baby, but he's a sweetheart.
Well, it certainly is something that affects the whole family.
Yes.
And we're going to talk about how it affects families and the support that Sufficient Grace Ministry can bring to women and families, but we'll talk about that in just a moment.
There's nothing bigger than that pain in that moment. It feels like there's nothing bigger. And I want anyone who's in that pit of despair to just know that there's hope, that even if you can't feel God, even if you're too weak to reach for him, he's carrying you, and he is there, and he's able to restore even this broken that you're dealing with. There's nothing too broken for him.
Now, back to Main Street.
And I'm here with Kelly Gerken, founder and director of Sufficient Grace Ministries. And Kelly has been sharing her story of why she's so passionate about this ministry. And Kelly, if you could share with our viewers, more about your ministry, its resources, how you are helping women and families.
Sure. So our ministry did not begin until 2004. It was about 8 years after our first loss. We were looking for a memory book to give to a friend who had lost a baby, and there wasn't anything that we felt sufficiently said, a treasured life has been here, a place for them to put their dreams and hopes for their baby that was comforting. That led us to just sit down at the computer. It led me to sit down to the computer crying and trying to create. What would I have wanted? It was like waking up from a sleep. What would I have wanted to receive as a gift? We wrote poems and scriptures and made it a place for families to create those memories and put those memories. After that, I wanted to have the moms to have something to hold to ease the ache of those empty arms. You actually feel a physical ache when you're supposed to be holding your baby, and just something soft to hold. That led us to create the Comfort Bear. My mother actually created the Comfort Bear, Kathy Bodenbender. That was her contribution. We added resources as the years went by. We have a Walking With You resource for fathers. We have another Walking With You resource that just talks about different question and answers and quotes that families might find comforting, ideas for memory making. All sorts of resources as time went on. Clothing to fit baby in all gestations, little bracelets for mom and baby. In 2006, we began to offer training for birth professionals on compassionate care for bereaved families. We were finding from from all of the families that we spoke to around the world at that point. We had a website and we would connect with these families. We would hear more and more stories that they didn't know resources were available. They didn't know that they could have held their baby, and they had so much regret to compound their grief. So we added the training to help with that. In 2012, we decided to start our own perinatal hospice and bereavement services so that trained mothers who had been through a loss, most of us are mothers, some of us are just compassionate about loss, could come in and come alongside a family as a support companion, a perinatal loss support doula, actually, so that they could offer birth planning and services from the time of diagnosis through the baby's birth and death and beyond. And that support person comes in with a photographer, a remembrance photographer, to capture those moments for the families. Helps kind of take away the fear. When you lose a baby, you're so afraid. You don't know what that baby's going to look like. Do people hold a baby after they die? You have these very difficult questions that no one sits around thinking, what would I do if my baby died? So to have someone come in that's comfortable, that can point to the beauty in that baby and bring a beautiful outfit to say, this baby matters, and we can dress this baby in something beautiful that someone made and give this to you, that changes the whole experience for the family. Takes away the fear so the parents can parent their baby. And we actually come in to the hospital, whether it's 2 in the morning or whenever, and we'll support them through their labor if needed, and throughout their time with their baby.
And through the years, you've helped many, many families. And how have you seen families impacted?
It's amazing the difference that it makes to just have your baby validated, to have this life validated for a family. It makes all the difference in the world. It takes away their regrets. We can't take their grief. We would never try to do that, but it alleviates so many regrets for these families. We send about 700 Dreams of You packages with all of our items to families around the world. And about 150 families in the state of Ohio are served in person each year through Sufficient Grace Ministries. We actually have branches throughout the state, so Northeast Ohio, Northwest Ohio, Southwest, Southeast, and Central Ohio.
Then these services are provided free of charge?
Yes, all of our resources and services are free of charge. If a family from England, for instance, is able to help make a shipping donation or for the cost, that's helpful, but we give them regardless of if anyone is able to do that. So there's no charge.
Well, that is awesome. Well, how can someone who has a friend that's going through a situation like this, how can they be helpful to them?
One of the things I feel like we do as a society in general, and especially as Christians, we are so desperate to offer comfort and hope and to just have the right words to say. And the truth is, there are no words that can take away this pain. There's no words to make this better. So we kind of need to rein in our effort, our desire to just say the right word. And we have to just come alongside these families and enter in with them and sit a while. Job, actually, there's a great demonstration in Job. His friends are doing a great job supporting him when they're just sitting there with him in his grief, just sitting there. But when they start talking, when they start telling Job how he needs to do it, that's when there's a problem. And too often, I think as Christians, we want to judge our performance or our faith. We're measuring how are they doing, and as Christians, we should grieve without hope. What does that look like? We're still going to hurt. And so what we need is someone to come alongside of us and to just enter in with us, maybe say, I'm so sorry, give a hug, give a safe place that validates their baby so they can share their story, and just enter in with them. Weep with those who weep.
That's right. Just love on them.
Exactly.
Well, you guys also work with hospitals, so maybe you could tell us about the partnership that you have.
We partner with several hospitals throughout the state. We can either go to a hospital because we partner with them and the hospital will call us and we can come and provide the services for the family, or individuals can call us as well. So we go to many hospitals even if they're not our partners. Those who partner with us, we're sort of their bereavement support. So Defiance Regional Medical Center was the first hospital to pilot our program a couple years ago, and we really appreciate them being willing and open to do that. they said such wonderful things about us that led to many others: Bryan Community, Henry County, Fulton County, Hicksville. We have a hospital in Medina that partners with us. And we've, of course, been to many more: Miami Valley and Dayton, OSU, Riverside. So all over the state, we cover many hospitals.
All right. Well, you also have a book that you have written, Sufficient Grace, and I know it tells your story in there, but maybe you could share a little bit more about it with our viewers.
Sure. The thing that I want to share about it, it's definitely our family's story, and it talks about our faith journey through trials. It talks about, obviously, our losses and how God carried us and made beauty from ashes in our lives. He's just the restorer. He just restores our broken places. But what I want to share about it is that it's not just for families who've gone through the loss of a baby. I've heard from many people who just faced some sort of trial and tried to navigate through their faith in that, tried to find where's God in this. And so I think that it's a comfort no matter what, because we're all going to face trials. We're all going to face some sort of loss. It may not be a loss that looks like mine. And certainly marriage is a tough thing, no matter what. It's hard to die to ourselves and learn how to surrender in our relationships. So just that, it's a beautiful story, and it's a beautiful story that's God's. It's His grace. So.
All right. Well, we just have a couple more minutes, but where can people, get your book or your resources, request you to speak, or find out more about you?
Our book is available on our website and on Amazon and Barnes & Noble and other places. Our website is www.sufficientgraceministries.org. You can also email me at sufficientgraceministries@gmail.com. We speak at many women's groups. We do hospital training. We speak at memorial services. So if you need resources or need to get a hold of us for any kind of support or information, that's where to do it.
All right. Well, I want to, give you the opportunity to have, a closing comment. We have another minute left. Is there something else that you would like to share with our viewers?
I think just if you are in a time where you're just really hurting right now, if you're in raw pain or grief, just one of the things for me, looking back to that time, there's nothing bigger than that pain in that moment. It feels like there's nothing bigger. And I want anyone who's in that pit of despair to just know that there's hope, that even if you can't feel God, even if you're too weak to reach for Him, He's carrying you, and He is there, and He's able to restore even this broken that you're dealing with. There's nothing too broken for Him.
All right, Kelly. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story and, about your ministry. And we know that this will touch so many people's lives. So thank you so very much.
Thank you.
All right. We'll be back in just a moment with some closing comments.
Now, back to Main Street.
Today's topic was tough for me. As a mother of 4, hearing Kelly's story is just heartbreaking. And as someone who's never experienced this pain, I wasn't sure I would have the right words or do the right thing. Then Kelly gave a great piece of advice. She shared the story of Job and his friends and how it reminds us that words are not always necessary when comforting others. We look at Job chapter 2, verses 12 and 13. It reads, "And when they raised their eyes from afar and did not recognize him, they lifted their voices and wept. And each one tore his robe and sprinkled dust on his head towards heaven. So they sat down with him on the ground 7 days and 7 nights, and no one spoke a word to him, for they saw that his grief was very great." That's 7 days and 7 nights that no one spoke a word to him. It shows us that, sometimes just being there for someone is enough. Just acknowledging their pain and grieving for them and grieving with them. I'm thankful for people like Kelly who are standing in the gap and helping others through their pain and equipping those of us who aren't sure how to help. As I prepared for today's show, I just didn't feel like I had the words to say. And then the Lord reminded me, hey, just pray. So if you would just take this moment to pray with me. Heavenly Father, we just come before you today, Lord, and thank you, and we give you all the glory. Thank you for people like Kelly, and I just pray for her ministry. I pray for the people that she's reaching out to and the lives that she's ministering to. I pray for those that are watching today that are hurting, that they would feel your hope today and peace that passes all understanding. And we pray this in Jesus' name. Well, if you've enjoyed today's show, I want to encourage you to, send us your feedback. And also, we're on social media. Please check us out on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at WLMB-TV 40.
We hope that Main Street has been a blessing to you today. Please feel free to contact the following to learn more about the topics discussed on today's show. WLMB would like to thank all the faithful supporters of WLMB that make this program possible.